good, y'all? We back with another video, man. Today we got bizarre coincidences in history that prove that we're in a simulation. We finna see what these coincidences are. And yeah, man, hopefully y'all having a great day and finna get into the video.
What's happening, folks? Welcome back to Most Amazing Top 10. I'm your host, Taylor McWaters, and you're in for a treat. This one is pretty odd. Here are the top 10 bizarre coincidences in history that prove the world is in a simulation. Yep, we don't exist. Let's do it. Kicking off the list at number 10, the Hoover Dam coincidence. We'll kick this list off on a grim note because why not? The Hoover Dam, okay, this massive accomplishment. Its first victim, sadly, was a man named J.G. Tierney. It was December 20th, 1922, and the official death toll from industrial accidents during the construction of the dam from 1921 to 1935 was sadly around the 200 number. It was a lot of deaths. It was pretty sad. The earliest and latest victims of the construction were both father and son. And if that's not coincidence enough, both of them died on the exact same day. They both passed on December 20th. J.G. Tierney sadly drowned while conducting surveys in the Colorado River, and then 13 years later, Patrick Tierney fell off an intake tower right before construction was complete. Grim start, but stay tuned, we have a lot more. Number 9, legendary musical neighbors. It's weird how similar some of your neighbors are, right? Like growing up, we had 3 Davids on our street. They all loved cutting their lawn at 7 a.m. What a coincidence, right? We all hated them. What a coincidence. Well, the 60s rock icon Jimi Hendrix and the 18th century composer George Friedrich Handel, they were both neighbors. A couple hundred years apart, but they were both neighbors indeed. They lived in 23 Brook Street and 25 Brook Street in London. What are the odds, right? Had George had been born 200 years later, we would have gotten the greatest collab of all time. Yeah, if you're local, of course you'll know there's a site there now. It's a famous landmark. But in terms of coincidences, there's music in the air on Brook Street. Something's going on. Kind of want to walk by and see if I'm better playing the flute. Maybe I could play the flute on that block, who knows? Number 8, same taxi, different tragedy. Okay, here's a dark one, buckle up folks, pun intended. Back in 1975, a man was sadly hit by a taxi in Bermuda. Now he of course sadly did not make it, all the while a passenger in the taxi witnessed the entire horrible event. Now that's life-changing in itself, that's trauma, right? A year later though, the same driver was driving the same passenger when all of a sudden, the taxi hits another civilian. That civilian just happened to be the initial victim's brother. Horrible.
What?
This is some Final Destination stuff. I don't like it at all. Like this, what are the odds here, really? Let's move on to something a bit nicer. Number 7, same day, different vows. Okay, brightening up the mood a little bit, bringing us all back to happy land. CBC News reported this one. It's a little nicer of an ending. Fred and Lynette Dubendorf, husband and wife, they were taking a stroll down the beach with their dog, living up the life, right? The classic. When they noticed a message in a bottle had washed up on the shore. Now, personally, I wouldn't be too excited, right? I'd be a little concerned. I've seen Castaway, you know? This message could go one of 2 ways. I have no idea. Like, what's going to be in here, right? Like, help, 1876, you're like, oh no. But they opened it, and inside they found wedding vows from another couple, Melody Kloska and Matt Bears. They had recently got married on a beach in Lake Michigan, and word spread rather quickly. Thing is, their wedding date was the same as the couple who found the message. That was the bizarre coincidence here. So they took it as a sign that both pairs were meant to be, and they sent a surprising letter to the lost couple's address. It's kind of nice, but it's also kind of creepy, you know? It'd be creepy on one hand. Hey, I found that message in a bottle. Cool, nice address, lovely home. Cool, I'll be back in a bit. Hope it works out. Who puts their address on a message? That's just asking for disaster. Number 6, $1 marriage. The story of Esther and Paul Gratchen. Okay, this one goes out to all the single folks out there, okay? Keep hanging on. Love's coming, it's out there. See, Paul had decided on asking Esther to marry him, and around the same time, he caught himself about to spend a $1 bill on a sandwich. But the dollar bill randomly had the name Esther on it. Okay, so he framed it. Obviously, this was a bizarre coincidence, and Paul recognized this. And when he showed Esther later, she was speechless, right? She loved it, but she didn't tell Paul her side of the story until after they tied the knot. See, much earlier, when Esther and a group of friends were all going through a breakup, they wrote their names on a dollar bill and said, whoever brings this bill back to them, they'll marry that man. Now, Esther didn't tell Paul the full story until after they got married because, well, she was worried this coincidence would have scared him away. Yeah, more than fair. Hey, I have a dollar bill and it's your name on it, so we have to get married now. So you're like, what? Bye. Number 5, Civil War coincidence. There's another war coincidence in this list, but I saved that for number 1 because it's too good. But this one here is also pretty insane. The Civil War began in 1861 with the first Battle of Bull Run. The Bull Run is a stream that passes through the farm of a 46-year-old Wilmer McLean. Passes through his farm, right? The Bull Run is a stream that passes through the farm of a 46-year-old Wilmer McLean. This property was in Virginia. Now, of course, once the dust settled, the property was destroyed, so McLean left his home with his wife, and for nearly 4 years, the pair were considered safe while the war was otherwise changing history. Then in 1865, the war came to a close when Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant at the Appomattox Courthouse, which at the time was literally steps away from McLean's new property. Yeah, he saw the beginning and the end of the Civil War by accident. He saw it front row too. What are the odds? Number 4, George D. Bryson. Back in the 50s, this story was spread all over Kentucky. Back in the 50s in Louisville, a man named George D. Bryson was checking into a hotel room. Now he walked up and asked if there was any mail for him, which on one hand is an excellent bit. I'm gonna do that next time I go to a hotel for sure. Hey, got any mail? Classic, because you're just visiting the one time. There's no way there's gonna be mail. That's the joke, right? Except this time there was. This time the hotel manager said yes, and there was in fact mail from the previous occupant of the room, who had also had the same name, George D. Bryson. Yeah, what are the odds, right? I remember one time I met Nether McWaters, and he was not related to me, and he also was not thrilled that we had the same name at all. It was the most bizarre thing. I was like, hey, can we talk about this? He's like, yeah, cool. I'm like, are you my brother? I don't want you to be anymore. Get out of here. Then I got Kyle, and I was like, you know what? Change your name. Now you're my new brother. Replace this guy. Number 3, Yanni and Laurel. Before we wrap up this curious list, we have to throw a fun recent one in as well. Remember this Yanni Laurel thing back in 2018? I only heard Yanni for like 2 weeks straight. I heard Yanni. That's it. For 2 weeks, guaranteed. I was determined that it was Yanni, okay? And then one day I listened and it was Laurel, and then I couldn't go back. It was just Laurel all of a sudden. Like, it immediately just changed. It was a completely different word. I felt sick. I was like, is this real life? How is this happening? This got everybody talking. What is this phenomenon that happens? Same with the dress mishap. What is going on? Well, many believe these viral illusions are proof that we're living in a simulation. Yeah. These arguments, you know, the dress is blue, no, it's white. These situations prove that we perceive reality in our own individual way. Everybody is living an individual perceived reality, so sometimes it doesn't always align. Sometimes we hear what we want to hear. Sometimes we hear Yanni, and then sometimes we hear Laurel, and it's completely different for some reason. I can't go back now. It's the worst. God, I hated this so much. The dress was back in 2015, then Yanni Laurel was 2018. I don't know. We're due for another glitch in the Matrix any day now. I come back next week, I have a different first name all of a sudden. You're like, what? Number 2, Miss Unsinkable. It's one thing to narrowly miss a natural disaster or a massive accident, but to not miss a tragedy 3 times in a row, that sounds like a curse, if you ask me. That's for sure a curse. Violet Jessup, this brave soul, survived 3 major ship disasters in history. She was born in 1887 in Argentina, and Jessup contracted tuberculosis at a young age and wasn't expected to live longer than a few months. She beat those odds and lived a healthy, relatively long life, which is shocking considering what I'm about to tell you. Violet, first of all, had a hard time getting hired as a stewardess on a ship because her youth and good looks were feared to distract crew and passengers. Yeah, you're too good looking to work on our ship. Welcome to the 1900s, I guess. Eventually, she got hired in 1910 to work aboard the HMS Olympic. Now, a year later, the Olympic collided with HMS Hawk, and the ship barely made it to shore. It was a tragedy. It was a huge disaster. Violet.
You're the guy with the gun, the person who would do anything to protect the ones you love. But did you know you could go to jail for simply doing the right thing to keep your family safe? Don't end up behind bars because you didn't know what would happen after a self-defense incident. And that's why the USCCA has created a 100% free guide.
Then served as a nurse aboard the Britannic right before World War I. The ship then collided with a German mine, and Violet jumped overboard and somehow survived with a fractured skull in the water and swam to safety. Afterwards, Violet worked on the Titanic, and on April 14th, 1912, she escaped another disaster on Lifeboat 16. I mean, like, the odds that you survive 3 times in a row is one thing, but to experience 3 of those in a row? And finally, number 1, World War I soldiers. We have to finish on a grim note because this one is one of the most bizarre, in my opinion. When the First World War ended, the amount of British lives lost were around 1 million souls. The first reported casualty of World War I was a soldier named John Parr. And then after a countless number of lives were lost, the last soldier to die was a man named George Edwin Ellison. Now, both heroes' resting places are both in the St. Symphorian Military Cemetery, and they just happen to be 15 feet apart. And of course, this was not planned, nor were any of the entries mysteries on our list. It's just another bizarre coincidence that was discovered after the fact. If you want to hear 10 more bizarre coincidences,
that is crazy, bro.
Learn how to say coincidences and then we'll return. I've been your host, Taylor McWaters. We'll see.
Yeah, bro. No more coincidences in the world. We're in a simulation, you know. Hopefully y'all like the video though. Yeah, bro, just sit back and chill. Don't take this shit too serious. And yeah, until next time.